What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video we're going to be taking a look at the new Pomoly T1 Mini 3. This is a titanium wood stove for hot tenting, so let's get right into it. Okay guys, so getting started, I'm actually going to do an unboxing of this stove, and bear with me because I've got the sun directly behind the camera just pounding me right in the face, so I can barely see that way, but I can see this way. So let's get right into the box. First off, you can notice that it does have the Pomoly logo on the front. Very nice, very slim packaging too. So coming into the box, just like the other Pomoly stoves, we do have the Pomoly carry bag that is wrapped in plastic. And this bag, I should mention, it is made of more of a recycled paper type material. And on the inside, it is lined with almost like felt. I'll open it right now and show you guys. So you can see it is more of a paper style bag with kind of a fabric. And then we've got the zipper over here. The inside does have a black lining of fabric. The thing with this bag is it is mainly a storage bag for home or transporting in a vehicle. It's not really the bag that you want to be using to take out into the woods because, like I said, it is recycled paper. It will eventually degrade and fail, so it's more of a storage bag. But it is a nice bag for that, just for storing it at home and whatnot, keeping all the burnt wood ash contained in the bag. So it does come with a carry bag. And then if I could tip this up, you guys can see the stove, the pipe, the manifold slash damper unit. It does come with a spark arrestor, and then it does come with cut gloves, which will help you assemble the pipe for the first use. Now today we're going to cheat just a little bit because I'm actually going to be using a pre-rolled and pre-burned pipe that I've used on many other stoves for this demonstration. But I will say, if you are rolling your pipe for the first time, the best way that I can recommend that is to have two people inside of a house somewhere where it's nice and flat and level, and use a foam pool noodle as a form. So put the foam pool noodle kind of underneath the pipe material and slowly roll it, and then slip your titanium rings here that are included with the pipe. Slowly start working those down and then remove the foam insert. It does take a bit of time, but trust me, if you take your time and do it, it'll be perfect, and then you'll end up with a nice pipe with no kinks or no bends. So comes with everything that you need. So let's start taking things out one at a time and lay it on the table. Now, like I said, the pipe I'm not going to use for this video, so we'll set that off to the side. The damper unit, as you can see, it does have 3 screws, and then the actual damper itself, so that sits in flush on top of the stove. You put the 3 screws in, and then you've got your damper control. Very nice piece. We've got the spark arrestor, which is more of a honeycomb design. It does have 3 fins that are drilled out, so you can attach guy lines to this while it's up top of your pipe, or way up top out of your tent, and you can guy this out so it doesn't rock the tent back and forth in high winds. So that is included. And then, like I said, the cut gloves, those are just generic cut gloves. I'm not going to use these today, but it does come with gloves if you require them. And then we have the actual stove itself, which has these nice Velcro straps. So it does actually strap in there quite nicely. You can get it nice and tight. And to slide the whole stove unit, the pipe, the damper, the arrestor, all fits inside of this bag. So I want to get the packaging out of the way. We're going to open up the stove and go through the assembly a little bit. And then we're going to get everything situated and get this thing burning a fire inside. Alright guys, I just removed the Velcro straps off of the stove body, and I removed a bunch of foam that was inside of here. So this thing was packed very, very nicely. So all of that's out of the way. Now we can get right into the stove. So starting off with the lid. Here you can see the Pomoly branding. We've got the hole up here. That's right where your little damper piece goes in. We've got the 3 titanium screws which come out with no tools needed. So those screws come out and that'll hold that in, which I'll show you in a little bit. This all is titanium. I should mention that the stove is all titanium other than the glass, of course. Underneath the lid, we do have 2 reinforced baffles, and this is kind of where I would like to talk about the name of the stove, because that will explain a lot of what's going on. So the name is T1 Mini, and this particular model is Mini 3. So the reason why it is called 3, we'll get into that, but the T stands for titanium. The 1 stands for 1 millimeter, and the 1 millimeter is thickness. So that's how thick the actual titanium material is. It's very thick and it's very strong. So T titanium 1 1mm mini, because this is actually the mini version. There is a large T1. This is the T1 Mini. And then the 3 stands for 3 glass windows. So the original T1 that I have is the T1 Mini. It only has the front glass in the window, and the side walls are actually solid. So that should help you guys understand why the name is T1 Mini 3. It does actually stand for specs of the stove itself. So that takes care of the lid, but like I said, there are 2 reinforced baffles, and it is 1mm thick titanium, so this stays very, very nice and strong on all of the Pomoly stoves, which I really, really like. So that's the lid. Let's move into the stove body itself. It's very, very simple. It is a fast fold design. So the front and the back fold out, the side folds up, the other side folds up the same way, and then there's these little thumb latches here that you just rotate into place, and there's no tools needed. You just rotate this into place, very simple. It is cold out today, my hands are freezing, and I can still put this stove together very easily. So that one side is fixed. We'll turn over to the other side. We'll lift this panel up. Same deal, just simply turn these latches over top of their corresponding tabs, and that is the body complete. And then here you've got the door with the little latch. You can open it, shut it. We've got our draft on the front, which is just a simple little thumb screw that actually slides very, very easily, so you can open it all the way. We've got some fallen snow out of the tree. We can open it all the way, or we can close it all the way, or wherever in between. And then underneath of the stove, we have the 2 legs. So these legs fold out, and this design is really, really easy, super easy to use when out in the snow, the wind. It's very, very fast setup. Legs fold out just like that. Here we have a lot of snow coming in. And then once we get our legs folded out, we can stand the stove up and then put the top lid on. So the top lid assembles much the same as the sides do. Same little thumb latches here, as I like to call them. You just pull that out. If I can see what I'm doing. Oh, there it goes. Pull that out. Make sure your lid's on flush. My lid wasn't on flush, so make sure that's on flush. Twist those out, and the rest will go on very easily. That is the only thing I will say. Do not try and force it or anything. Make sure the lid's on flush. My sweater was actually snagged on the other side. So everything is put together very nicely, and like I said, no tools, no gloves needed, all together. And then on the top, we do have 3 knurled titanium screws. I'm going to remove these 3 screws. And we got our damper piece lined up here. Simply drop it in, no tools again. Very easy. These screws, if you're worried about losing these, I have many of these stoves and I have yet to lose a single screw. But if you are worried about losing them, you can go to your local hardware store or automotive section and grab some bright orange or red engine paint in an aerosol can, and you can spray the heads of these orange or red, and it'll prevent you from losing them if you do drop them. I, fortunately, knock on wood, I have not had that happen to me yet, so the choice is yours if you want to paint them. But those just go in nice and easy, and once we get those in there, we simply take our titanium pipe, and like I said, I'm going to be using this pre-rolled, pre-formed pipe for the demonstration. This is a new one, does come with the stove. We're getting snowed on a lot, so we're going to get the pipe situated on top of there, and we're not going to use a spark arrestor for today because we're not inside of a tent. I'm not worried about the sparks, but I'm going to get the pipe on top, and then we're going to do, I think we're pretty good for a look at the stove. I should mention I do have another video on the T1 Mini, just a regular Mini, so I'll put the link to that video down in the description of this video if you guys are interested in checking out that, as well as all the other Pomoly stoves. We're going to be using these bricks today for fuel, so we're going to be using 2 types of fuel. So I'm going to use these bricks, and I'm going to explain why once I light the fire, but these have to be lit with wood, so I do have actual wood that I'm going to be putting in here to light it, and a little handful of birch bark, which I don't like using, but we're going to use the birch bark to purposely dirty the glass, because I want to see how long it takes to actually burn off. Because I know a lot of people that are getting into stoves with glass, they often wonder, does the glass stay completely blackened? And it doesn't. Once you get the stove burning nice and healthy, you damp it down a little bit, and the heat will actually burn off all of that carbon, and you'll be left with nice clean windows. So let's just get the pipe on and get the stove opened up, and we'll get the fire burning inside. And this is going to be more of a stress test kind of first burn, so we're going to see what the stove looks like afterwards when I'm done burning. But we're also going to be inspecting it while it's burning and checking the functionality of it, making sure everything works. And hopefully at the end of this video you guys will have an idea of whether this is the stove for you or not. So I want to get the pipe on, load it full of wood, birch bark, and we're going to get a fire lit. All right, so I'm just about ready to get the pipe on, but one thing I do want to mention while I'm assembling this particular pipe that I'm going to be using is actually shorter than the pipe that comes with the stove. Just dropped my spark arrestor. I cut this pipe down. It was a 2-meter pipe, and I cut it down to about 1 meter and maybe a 1/4 meter and a half, if that. So I actually cut this down to fit a very specific tent that I have. And so that's the reason for the short length, but it does come with a 2-meter pipe, and you can upgrade to a 3-meter pipe if you need. I'm going to show you guys how the pipe goes on. So basically I have the rolled pipe, and I went and put 2 rings quite far up on the pipe. I personally like to put the seam of the pipe facing the back, so I'll put it towards the damper handle. You can put it any way you like, but you just simply slip it over top. Very easy. And then grab the ring and slide it down. Now this is where those cut gloves come in handy, because if you slip and hit that sharp edge, it will slice your hand wide open. So what I like to do is put my hand on the opposite side of the seam and keep my fingers off of that actual seam area, and then just run that all the way down until it's really nice and snug. And then I follow it up with another ring, and we'll grab another one down here, and I just kind of space them out however I feel it needs to be spaced out. You'll know when your pipe starts to kind of bubble out that you need another ring. And that's the assembly right there. So it goes on very easy, it comes off fairly easy, but it does not fall off, or I should say I have personally never had one of these pipes pop off the stove. The only way that I can see that possible is A, if your stove is on uneven ground and it melts snow and ice and the stove itself gets shifted or bumped very hard, or if it's extremely windy. In that case, you should stop burning, take the pipe down, because high winds will crinkle any pipe from any manufacturer. And I always bring a warm sleeping bag anyway, so if the winds are extremely high, I do suggest just pulling your pipe down, put it down on the ground, roll it up, bring it inside, whatever you got to do, and just call it a night for the stove. So just wanted to share that with you, because I have been asked how does this connect there. You can go to the hardware store and get little hose clamps and screw it on with a screwdriver or whatnot. It's not needed. I find this works for me, and that's kind of the way they designed it. So with that out of the way, now we're going to get fire inside of this little guy. I'm going to jump on the other side, open up the door. While we're on this side, you can get a clear view of the 3 windows, so you can get a good look going through. Very nice. I'm actually excited for this because this little stove fits in smaller tents, and it will provide a lot of ambient lighting, which will be really nice. So let's get the fire going right away, because I'm dying to see how this looks. Alright guys, this stove is rocking some heat now. The bottom of the stove is putting out enough heat on my picnic table here that it's actually drying it out, so there's quite a bit of steam rising up from underneath the stove. I did load in our first brick. So one of these compressed bricks, there is one that I just put in there. I'll open the door with the stick so I don't burn my hand. Give you guys a view there so you can see the brick is in there burning nicely. Get this piece of wood off of the window. I find with these stoves with a window, if you have any wood that's actually touching the window, the glass itself, it will prevent the window from cleaning itself. So that's what we're going to try now, because this stuff here does scratch off very easily, so I'm actually cleaning the window just by rubbing it with the stick. But we're gonna shut the door, and like I said, getting the wood off of the glass. We don't want anything touching that. With that brick in there, I've damped the draft down about 1/3 of the way, and my damper in the rear is about 1/3 of the way shut. I'm actually gonna bump this draft down a tiny bit more. That looks good right there. And what the draft and damper does is it creates suction. So shutting the damper down, it will actually trap more hot air inside of the stove. It will also snuff out the fire if shut too much. So this is kind of info for a totally different video on how to use your stove, but for those of you who know what I'm talking about, that damper is, like I said, shut a little bit, and the front draft is shut a little bit to create some suction in the stove, but to trap the hot air to help burn off all that carbon and all that deposit on the windows, because the windows are fairly black right now. That will burn off, and that's what we're going to do right now. We're just going to let it go and let it do its thing. I'm going to start a timer, and I'm going to let you guys know while this is burning and getting some beautiful colors on the top. By the way, it's starting to turn nice purplish blue on top of the stove, and the sides are starting to just turn bronze right now. So while this heats up and does its thing, I am going to put a timer on and time how long it's going to take for that glass to actually clean itself. Okay guys, we're 15 minutes into the first burn. We're still on the first brick, and already the window is cleaning itself right on this side. It is crystal clear for a spot about that big. I'm going to bring the camera in, position it so you guys can see that self-cleaning itself. 15 minutes in, that's actually faster than what the larger stoves do. Usually it's about 20 minutes to half hour. This is actually burning very, very hot and cleaning the window. So I'll put the camera here. This side is also burning off, but I'll put the camera here for a couple seconds just so you guys can see that process happening. Alright guys, so you can now see at the top of the chimney, this stove is burning very, very clean. There is no smoke coming out of it at all. And that's a short pipe with a stove with no baffle. There is no baffle inside of this. It is just a straight burn chamber up and out the pipe, burning very, very nice and clean. So, and it is nice and warm, I should say that. My hands are freezing cold. I should probably put my gloves on, but I'm liking this a lot. So I anticipate the speed that these windows are cleaning themselves off, I would probably say inside of a tent with no breeze kind of pushing in the vents, I would say it would probably take about 45 minutes to an hour of nice clean burning wood to clean those windows off completely. Now, we may not get that far today on this burn, but I do know with the T1 Mini, the original, not the Mini 3, this front window cleans off in about an hour, completely clean, and it stays clean generally throughout the entire night. So I'm going to burn this for another half hour to an hour, and then I'll bring you guys back with my final thoughts once I'm a little bit warmed up. And then we're going to disassemble the stove. But before I disassemble the stove, I do have a measuring tape. I'm going to take some general measurements of the stove, and then we're going to disassemble the stove, take it apart, and see what the heat did to it for the first burn. Alright guys, here we are with the stove completely burned out. There's no more fire inside of it. It is cold to the touch. I've already done my first kind of visual inspection, and I've removed the damper because this is the first part that I always like to check and see how it functions. Everything looks really good. So let's take a look at the stove in depth now. You can notice the windows did clean themselves off, front, side, and the other side. Now the other side didn't completely clean itself off. I think it needs more time burning. But as you can see, I'll put my hand inside. You can see that that did burn itself clean. It takes a bit of time, but it does clean itself off. I'm going to kind of go through this quickly because I am freezing. The weight of the stove, I'll tell you that right now because I wrote it on the inside of the box. 5.84 pounds, 2.65 kilograms. That's the stove, the damper portion, the pipe, 2-meter pipe, and the spark arrestor all together. So this came off very easily. These 3 screws, like I said, they come off very easily. Everything came off as far as that goes really easy, and I did it in between warming my hands up because it is actually minus 15 degrees and we've got snow falling all over the place. So earlier, I think I said it was -11, -12 degrees Celsius. It was actually -15, and then a wind chill on top of that. So I'm going to do this quickly. Opening up the top. Actually, let's take measurements first. Let's do measurements. I'm going to do the width. We are at 7, and it looks like 7 5/8 for the width. For the length, we are at 12 foot. For the height, we are at, it looks like 6 inches dead on almost. Let me do that again. Let's say 5 15/16. So we'll say 6 inches. The height from the tabletop to the top of the stove is 9.5. And it looks like 3 5/8 from the table to the bottom of the stove. Looking at the stove overall, it didn't change color as much as the other stoves do in the same test, and I think that has to do with the frigid cold air cooling the outside titanium, preventing it from changing color. But it did turn purplish here. The bottom did turn purplish quite a bit. I'm going to have to burn this in again inside of a tent to really get it to change color, but it did get very, very hot. So let's take a look at the joints and see how much deformation actually formed in the stove and how well everything comes apart. Keep in mind this is bare hand and I'm frozen. So let's start with these two. Those two came open pretty easy actually. This one came open, it was a little bit of a struggle. So I think maybe this one I'll loosen up inside of my home with a hex key. After your first burn, you might notice that you may have to loosen and kind of tweak things just a little bit. The other side came right off, so that was really cool. The top lid, not a terrible amount of deformation. I'm actually really surprised with that one. This is probably the least out of all of the Pomoly stoves. And it is cold, so it did go through a hot and cold cycle. Now, this is very typical. This being 1 millimeter thick of titanium, I will say the deformation on these stoves is absolutely normal. This is significantly less than what the other stoves on the market do, because the other stoves on the market that are 0.4 or 0.5 of a mil, they deform terribly. Some of them are awful and very, very just not happy if I were to purchase one of those stoves and end up with massive deformation where the stove wouldn't go back together. So I'm not seeing any deformation of the stove body itself. It is still a pretty near perfect rectangle. No deformation on the door. Everything functions very, very easily. That works. The draft works very well. And like I said, the damper works very well. It is frigid cold though, so let's get this open. That one came open pretty good. That one came open pretty good. Let's check the rear. Okay, this one right here, this one was a little stiff, so I'm actually going to loosen that off a little bit inside my home. That closes really easy. Wow. So that's easy. This side, let's turn it around and have a look here. Okay, so that one turns really easy as well. So that, pretty happy with that. Now this is where the warpage usually happens on these stoves. So let's have a look. Wow. Okay, so that actually shut really easy. The front, you do have to push down on the side just a tiny bit. It practically closed itself. So no adjustment needed to those screws. I'm very, very shocked at that actually. Let's check the legs. Very easy, very easy. So look at that. We've got the entire stove packed down. No issues other than those two screws that I'm going to loosen up a little bit just because when my hands are cold, I don't want to fiddle with it. It does work perfectly fine though. So I got a snowplow coming down the road now, so I'm going to try and wrap this up quickly so you guys can have the information so I don't freeze. I'm going to put the link to the description of where you can get the link in the description of where you can get these stoves from, as well as the review video that I did for the original T1 Mini. So if you're wondering if you want the T1 Mini or the T1 Mini 3, I have videos on both, this video plus the other video. So if you're interested in checking that out, definitely check it out. I am freezing cold, so if you guys have any questions, please drop it down in the comments section and I'll be sure to get back to you. But right now, like I said, I got a snowplow coming down the road very loud, so I'm going to wrap it up right now and say goodbye to you guys. Thank you so much for watching and catch you in the next video.